Welcome back, Washington Commanders fans, inside the Commanders Declassified podcast. Your 7-7-1 Washington Commanders are traveling to, or I don't know, is it a home game or is it a away game, guys? I always
Home
get
game.
this wrong. It is a home game. Yes. The beautiful city of Cleveland is coming to Washington to play us. They are led by the much maligned Deshaun Watson. They have an excellent receiver in Amari Cooper. And they got a defense that can get after the quarterback anytime they want to. But let me say what's up to the guys. Eric, happy holidays, man. I hope you had a good holiday. How are you?
I had a wonderful holiday. How did you guys make out? Did you get everything you wanted in your stockings?
Man, the stockings were filled with coal, actually. But you know what? We'll be all right.
Yeah. Coal in the shape of a 37-20, right?
Exactly.
Big old lump of San Francisco coal.
Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome. Had a good holiday. Hope you guys had a good holiday. I'm ready. I'm ready to see what these last two games of the year look like.
It's gonna be interesting. And Brian's got that big, beautiful Commanders flag behind him, looking sharp, man. Yeah. I like that.
There you go. Oh wait, there you go.
Got all the merch. Brian's got a water bottle for those of you on the radio. He's got a slick water bottle from the Commanders.
In Philadelphia Eagles colors for some reason.
I don't know what's going on with the lighting here tonight, but it's all jacked up.
Yeah, he got a new studio. He's got studio lighting now, and a boom mic and everything. But listen, if you are listening right now, subscribe. You can still subscribe while this episode is playing. Make it happen. If you're watching us on YouTube, shout out to you guys too. Hit that subscribe button, like, comment, what else? Share, do what you do. You guys have been great about helping this podcast grow. We've been doing excellent. Man, did we say this on a previous episode that we're in the top 10% of most followed podcasts on audio platforms, especially Spotify? So look, we're doing things out here. We're doing things, but we want to keep growing. We want to get the word across and help people know, look, there's this excellent Commanders podcast. It's called Commanders Declassified. Anywho, we don't have any bills to pay tonight. We're off from our normal read. So, Eric, we're just going to get you full voice tonight on everything Washington Commanders. And let's talk about this San Francisco game for a couple of minutes before we move on to the Browns. The big news coming out of that game was that Heinicke got benched in the second half. Carson Wentz came back in the game for the first time since the Chicago game. And I thought he looked pretty effective, pretty efficient. Eric, did you think that benching was justified?
Yes, he was. Heinicke was melting down. It was going nowhere well. You know, the fumble, I think, rattled him because he came back. That interception he threw, probably the worst pass he's thrown this year. I mean, he was throwing to a running back. I think it was Brian Robinson, and it was nowhere near the running back. It was literally right to a linebacker that was 3 yards from the running back. It was a terrible throw, and it was a harbinger of things to come. And I was kind of saying last week, I was pretty sure we were going to see Wentz this week. The hook was going to be quick. I thought up until that point, Heinicke actually was playing one of his better games of the season. He was doing pretty well up until then. Obviously, we know how good San Francisco's defense is, but the team was holding its own. They responded well, and they put together a really nice drive to start the second half. They went down, got that touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin. But the wheels just came off, and a change was needed at that point. I'm a Heinicke supporter, not a Heinicke, advocate, but I'm a Heinicke supporter. Like, I want him to do well. And I think he's just as capable of running this offense as Carson Wentz is, but it was time for him to get pulled. I think the Heinicke train has kind of run its course this year. I think this is kind of what you're always going to see out of him. He's going to come in, he's going to give you a spark. You'll put together a nice run of games, but at some point the wheels are going to come off. And I think these past couple of weeks, that's kind of what we have seen. And I'm fairly certain we're going to see Carson Wentz as our starting quarterback for the rest of this season, however long that is.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, he essentially did what a backup quarterback is supposed to do. They come, give you your bridge until your starter's ready. If they go too long, they start tailing off, and that's what he did. He started trailing off a little bit towards the last couple of games, same thing he did last year. Brian, overall, the run game, not supremely effective. I think Brian Robinson was about 2.6 yards a carry. Jonathan Williams was 4.3 yards a carry. but he only had a couple of rushes. Is that about what you expected against that 49ers defense?
Yeah. This wasn't going to be a game where you have, 5 yards of carry. It just, it really wasn't, not with this type of defense, the speed that they have on defense and the level of athletes that they have at all three levels of the defense, right? It's not like they just have one really good defensive lineman and that's it. No, they've got defensive linemen, linebackers, secondary, everybody can play on that defense. So it wasn't a matter of, being able to gain some yards, but I really thought the run game, there really was no kind of creativity, or it was almost an afterthought. Like it felt like the week before they didn't use the run game, so it was just like, all right, here's a couple of carries for Brian Robinson. Now all of you can shut your mouth, right? You can stop complaining about it on social media. You can stop complaining about it on the radio. I ran the football a little bit, from Scott Turner. We had a couple of 4th and 1s, 3rd and shorts, and we give it to Heineke to sneak it. We give it to Curtis Samuel. We give it to Gibson, everybody but Brian Robinson. So very odd approach to the run game. Other runs that were working, and like, hey, guess what? You mentioned it. Jonathan Williams was running well, and what do? Well, we just go right away from it. So very odd approach to the run game. I think you could kind of see, Scott taking back over, getting preparation to launch Carson Wentz 40 pass attempts here again. But very odd to see that running game and kind of what they chose to do with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, just no rhythm, no flow, just really, really offbeat. And I think if you look at what the game plan was with Heineke, he was averaging almost 10 yards an attempt, I believe, which is anti-Taylor Heineke. Like, that's not what you want to do with Taylor Heineke, but they were forcing the ball down the field. Now, the 49ers secondary is obviously questionable, especially deep, but it just felt like our offensive coordinator still haven't figured out a way to make this guy successful, or anybody successful to that point. And then, of course, Wentz came in the game. And what I thought was interesting about Wentz when he came in the game was the ball distribution. Heineke was really starting to favor Jahan Dotson a lot. And you saw sort of a shift between Dotson and McLaurin. McLaurin got his still. But Wentz and Curtis Samuel, that seems to be Wentz's 1. And then Dotson is his 1A. And then McLaurin is his B. In terms of his personal progressions through the plays that are called for him. It's interesting. We'll see how that develops. Nonetheless, all right, let's go to Cleveland. And the Browns are winning about 40% of their games. So they are eliminated from the playoffs. We still have a shot. We have a realistic shot at the playoffs, folks. Initially, Eric, when you look at this game, give me your 3,000-foot sort of perspective on what this game is.
I mean, it's a huge game for the Commanders because they, every game is a must win from here on out. Technically, I think that, a win this weekend and a couple of losses by other teams can clinch a playoff spot for the Commanders. But realistically, you have to win your last 2 games to be alive because Detroit and Green Bay are coming back. They're getting hotter. Detroit lost last week, but they've been really hot up until that point. Green Bay, the last couple of weeks, has looked good the last 2 games. And they're in the thick of it. Now, the Commanders have the not that a tiebreaker matters with our tie, but, we do have a tiebreaker over Green Bay, do not have one over Detroit. They do play each other. So if they were to tie each other, somehow that would come into play maybe. But this is a huge game for the Commanders. The Browns defense is good. It's not the 49ers. So there's that. The Browns have a very good pass rush. They're, with Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett are phenomenal edge rushers. They're kind of soft up the middle. They're not a good run defense, which in theory should play into the Commanders' hands because that is the strength of our offense, is running the football. We'll see how Scott Turner does that with his new toy Carson Wentz back in. This is not a game that you should come out and throw 40 times. Not that there's any game that this offense should come out and throw 40 times, but this is definitely not the one because the Browns pass defense is pretty strong. They've got a good secondary with Greedy Williams and what's his name? Minka Fitzpatrick's back there. Greg Newsom's back there. They got a solid secondary. A solid linebacking core with JOK and what's going on there, but the middle of their defense not great. And this is a game that they should run the ball. I would like to see them do that. If they do that, they've got a really good chance at winning this game because Cleveland's offense isn't where it should be with thus far with Deshaun Watson at quarterback.
Yeah, and that's really the wild card is Deshaun Watson and where he's at with his comeback to the NFL, if you will. Brian, what are you seeing from Deshaun Watson so far?
I see a guy who hasn't played football in essentially 2 years. I mean, he is extremely rusty. I think he's having to acclimate himself, one, to the speed of the game again, right? Like, the NFL is so fast that, if you miss like one game, right, there's an adjustment period for that. Now take that to essentially to the next level, right? 2 years of not seeing NFL quality defenses, edge rushers, cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers. And then also, how far those defenses have advanced, right? Different formations, different coverages, those types of things. So he's very much rusty. This is the best time as any to beat Deshaun Watson. And the Browns, right? You don't want him to have a full season or, 17, 18 games back under his belt where he really kind of has a full command of the offense. It's a brand new offense that he's learning or has been learning here these last couple of months. You can still see the talent. You can still see the zip on the ball. You can still see some of the escapability, but there is some hesitation there because, again, he hasn't seen some of these things in a very long time. So this is the perfect time for our defense to put a lot of pressure on him. It's not something we can just sit back and say, okay, our front four will get after him. No, blitz him every chance we get, pressure him, let him try to make some of those decisions faster.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot more about Deshaun Watson in a little while, but I think from what I've seen, he's starting to put it together more and more every game, and the numbers statistically back that up, at least if you're using PFF as your reference, but we'll dive into that more later. Eric, you know what time it is. Let's put your Scott Turner hat on. If he was Eric, if he was Eric, what would you do against this Cleveland defense offensively to be successful?
Yeah, I would kind of alluded to it earlier. I would run the football, and I would run it a lot right at them. Their pass defense, they've got a pretty solid pass defense. They're top 10 in the NFL in pass defense. They're bottom 10 in run defense. They do have a solid secondary. I think I said Minkah Fitzpatrick earlier. I think it's Denzel Ward that I'm talking, not Minkah Fitzpatrick. They're in the AFC and they play defense, so that's good enough for me. But yeah, Denzel Ward's the guy. Greg Newsome is back there playing slot corner. He's apparently doing a very good job this year. Greedy Williams, I think he might be banged up though. I don't think he's played in a couple of weeks, but they're very solid defensively in the secondary, and of course the edge rushers with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. You know what those guys bring. But this defense, teams have run on them this year and they've run successfully. I think you've got to do that. So if I'm this offense, it's a Brian Robinson game. Antonio Gibson's a little nicked up, so we may see our guy Jay Will a little bit more, and then I would hope so because the guy rips off 6 yards every time he touches the ball. So yeah, I mean that's a heavy dose. Those guys are similar in style, Robinson and Williams, and I think that's a good combination against his defense. Just pound them, and then you hit them over the top with play action. Again, they've got good corners, but Terry McLaurin has feasted on good corners all season. I don't see that changing. I mean, he's got, James Bradbury and Darius Slay and Jair Alexander. He's going to claim those guys on his taxes. I don't think, anybody on Cleveland's really going to scare him, as good as they are, and no disrespect to them, but Terry's that good. Jahan Dotson has really come on the last couple of weeks. Those guys are going to be there in the play action game, and they're going to be there when you need them on third down. But this has got to be a 35 to 40 carry football game to really win this. Win time of possession. Don't let Deshaun Watson get back into a rhythm by letting him on the field. Hold the ball for 35 minutes and pound, and I think you can win this game.
Yeah, I think you are spot on with how we should win this game. However, Scott Turner is going to roll out the 11 car, and I think he's he's going to start chucking it deep. That's what I think is going to happen.
It's there if you build on it, if you set it up, it's there. You run on this defense because this defense is going to have to sell out to stop the run, and the play action will be there. But Scott just doesn't. He has to prove that he's smarter than everybody else. So he's just going to come out and start throwing it all over the place with Carson. And our offensive line isn't good. They have really good edge rushers, and our offensive line does not have really good edge rush blockers. So we need to make sure that Carson Wentz is upright, and the play action is the way to do that.
Yeah.
But we all know that. It's just that our offensive coordinator doesn't know that.
He does not know that at all. This should 100% be, as you said, Eric, a Brian Robinson game. This is literally the type of game he was born for. And yet, it's not going to happen. He has, and I'm going to say this again because it annoys me to no end. He has 2 rushing touchdowns this year. That is unacceptable. That is, you have a guy that big and that powerful, and my guy has 2 rushing touchdowns this year. Offensive coordinator, figure it out. You can't stop. Look, I hated on Brian Robinson as much as anybody.
Yes, you did.
And look,
we have the receipts.
I don't think he's elite, right? But you can't stop my man on 3rd and less than 3.
No,
it's not happening. You can't. What's different in the red zone? Why don't we ever get this man the ball in the red zone?
If you think about the last 2 weeks, the previous week against the Giants on a 3rd and 3, we gave it to Curtis Samuel. Down by the goal line this past week, we gave it to Gibson. A 4th and 1 in the middle of the field. We let Heineke. Heineke is a small child. Like he is a very small child, and we let him try to quarterback sneak it, and it all failed. Meanwhile, Brian Robinson is just sitting on the sideline, hanging out like that. None of that makes any kind of sense. But yet, that's where we see ourselves right now.
And you know what we didn't do on that quarterback sneak? The thing that every other team in the NFL has figured out: the running backs go up and they just start pushing him.
Yeah.
That you're allowed to do that. It's going to get outlawed. I guarantee you it's going to be illegal next year, but you can do that right now. So let's start doing that. Plus, if you've got Carson Wentz, he's got a better chance at making that. But you're right. He called that to Taylor Heineke. And it's just unforgivable with Brian Robinson against the Giants averaging 7.5 yards a carry that you're going to give a 3rd and 3 to Curtis Samuel on a jet sweep. Get out of here. That should get you fired. Regardless of what Twitter experts say, Scott Turner is a crap offensive coordinator.
Ellie, on our Carson Wentz declassified, I think you had asked the question about Turner and how they would get along with Wentz, and I made a joke. I was like, Scott Turner has a brand new shiny toy. He's going to show it off to everybody each Sunday. We might never run the football again. I was just joking, but unfortunately, we've kind of seen that play out here, right? The first 6 games of the year, 40+ pass attempts. These last couple of games, we started to move away from the run. So these last 2 games, it's only 2 games, but it's going to be important to see. Are we going to go back to the 40+ pass attempts, or are we going to go to what got us that 6-1 stretch where we were able to win games? So very important to see what this offense looks like.
100% agree. Now, look, Brian Robinson in the receiving game, he had his first, against Green Bay, 2 catches, 13 yards, 6.50 yards of reception on 2 targets. And then he had a game, he had 2 catches for, -6 yards. You know how it is. Fast forward a couple weeks, no catches. Week 12, 2 catches, 20 yards, 10-yard average. Week 13, 2 catches, 15 yards, 7.50 yard average. Week 15, 1 catch, 18 yards. Maybe get the ball to this guy a little bit more in the pass game too, because when you do, he's effective, but he just goes chunks of games without seeing a pass come his way at all either. I don't know what's to Scott Turner when it comes to Brian Robinson Jr., but he does not have a plan for this man. I'm just going to say it right now. All right, Brian, you're Cleveland's defensive coordinator. How would you attack a Carson Wentz, Scott Turner, Washington Commander-led offense? Break it down, brother.
Oh, if I'm the defensive coordinator, I am going to make Scott Turner prove he understands NFL protections. I'm going to be blitzing him. I'm going to be sending my edge rushers after him every chance I get. I don't even care if it's a running play. I'm sending everybody, because we've seen over these last 3 to 4 games here how bad the protection is. We take, backup tight ends, Cole Turner, and we ask them to block Nick Bosa. We ask just tight ends in general to block star pass rushers. Sometimes we leave those star pass rushers unblocked and give them free shots on our quarterback. So I really, if I'm Cleveland's defensive coordinator, I'm bringing as much pressure as I can on Carson Wentz, or, we're assuming it's not official yet. We're assuming it will be Carson Wentz on, the Washington quarterback. Every chance I get, I'm having my receivers play tight on, or my cornerbacks play tight on the receivers, not giving them any room, disrupting some of those timing routes. That way we can get to the quarterback. In particular, there is a monster there named Myles Garrett. He is awesome. Charles Leno cannot block him. I like Charles Leno, but he cannot block Myles Garrett. We need to double him with either a tight end or a running back. Somebody else has to help Charles Leno. We cannot ask Charles Leno to block Myles Garrett. If we do, that's not on Charles Leno. That's on the offensive coordinator not helping him, because that should not happen at all. The rest of their defensive line is solid. They've got another guy out there, Taven Bryan, a former University of Florida player, very similar to John Ridgeway, a very strong guy, uses his leverage pretty well. They do have Jadeveon Clowney, but he's in concussion protocol, so he may play, he may not. But if he does play, that's another pass rusher we've got to worry about, who's out there and who can get after the quarterback at any particular time. When you go to the linebacker level, they've got a good player at middle linebacker. The Cleveland Browns traded for Deion Jones. Deion Jones was the Atlanta Falcons middle linebacker. Some of Washington fans on Twitter kind of wanted us to trade for him. Cleveland Browns traded a 6th-round pick for him. He's 28 years old from LSU. He is an excellent linebacker, one of those guys who can run sideline to sideline. Is he as good as Fred Warner, who we saw last week? No, but he's a really good middle linebacker nonetheless. So he's somebody who we're going to have to pay attention to. And Eric basically went over the secondary, but you've got Denzel Ward. He's a really good corner, but we have Terry McLaurin, who's really kind of elevated his game this year in terms of facing top corners. So I don't really expect that to be a problem. Greg Newsom's a solid player, but I really don't think he could handle Jahan Dotson right now. Then you've got John Johnson, who is actually a good free safety. He's a really good player. So if we are going to take any deep shots, we need to make sure we know where John Johnson is in that secondary, because he's a good football player. But that's really what it is, right? We saw the first 6 games of what happened with defenses facing Carson Wentz. So I imagine Cleveland Browns will be no different. They will try to pressure him as much and as often as they can.
Man, spot on, man. Spot on. It's going to be up to Scott Turner to counter what the Browns are going to try to do. My confidence level for that is not all that high, but let's see what happens. All right. The Browns attacking our defense. Let me spell this out for you.
I got one note. I wrote this down specifically because so the Browns have another linebacker by the name of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He is a guy that a lot of Washington fans wanted. He is out on injured reserve. He has only played 11 games this year. He played 14 last year. Jamin Davis has not missed a game and is completely healthy and durable. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah does seem to not be available. So I know there was a lot of debate about him, but I think we've got probably the better end of that deal.
That's what we said before the draft.
Yeah,
about JOK. It was exactly that. He plays so recklessly, and he throws himself into every tackle. And for a guy who weighs 220 pounds, that's just you're not going to last in the NFL, and that's what we're seeing. So I'll take Jamin over JOK, even though I did kind of like him too, and I definitely was all in when he dropped out of the first round. But I think he was a year before. He came in the year before Davis, though. Really? Did he come in 20 and not 21?
No, I think it was same year as Jamin.
Yeah, so he had a heart condition and fell to the 3rd round or something like that.
Yeah.
I think
it just doesn't affect me directly, and it was 2 years ago. I barely remember what I had for breakfast today.
Yeah, and I think he leading up to the draft too. I think he at one point he was like 205, 207.
Oh,
And
wow.
then he put on weight going into the
Yeah.
combine and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things, but I mean, he's a good player. He just can't stay healthy, but
Yeah.
hopefully he does and he recovers well. All right, Cleveland's offense. Let me put it to you this way, okay? You might look at some of the stats they had under Brissett and say, okay, this isn't the most impressive team I've seen offensively. I thought Brissett did a tremendous job with that offense there. And then Watson comes into play. And as you said earlier, Brian, Watson is rusty as an old Cadillac. But you can see there are certain elements to playing quarterback that he's starting to figure out. He's starting to remember. He's starting to get his groove back a little bit. But what this offense to me is really about is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is having the best season of his career at this point, okay? This guy is unstoppable, and you know the issues we've had stopping really good running backs and running teams. I'm going to tell everybody listening right now, Nick Chubb is going to have a career day against our defense. Again, not what I want, but this guy is just that freaking good. This year, let me give you a list of his sort of rushing totals for his games that they played so far. 141 yards, 87 yards, 113 yards, 118 yards, 134 yards, 56 yards, 91 yards, 101 yards, 63 yards, 19 yards, 116 yards, 80 yards, 34 yards, 99 and 92 yards respectively. That adds up to 1,344 yards this season so far, and there's still 2 games left. 4.9 yards per carry, almost 5 yards a carry. My guy has 12 rushing touchdowns on the year as well. So if you extrapolate that out, he probably projects somewhere around, 1,500 yards rushing, 1,550, and 14 rushing touchdowns, unless he has one of his patented multi-touchdown games against us, which is certainly possible. I think Nick Chubb's going to have a banger of a game. I think he's going to get a couple of touchdowns himself. They have a tremendous receiver, and Amari Cooper, the old infamous Amari Cooper, who stood us up at the altar when Ron Rivera threw the 100 milli bag at Amari Cooper. He said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going back to Dallas. Was actually kind of trash there. Got traded to Cleveland. I mean, he was all right, but he got traded to Cleveland this year. And was it this year or was it last? I can't remember, but he's been really good this year, especially I've seen a couple of games when Watson's been back, and I think it seems like he's kind of found new life. Amari Cooper's always been a good receiver. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL and always has been. I think he's going to give us some problems. Our secondary has gotten, I don't want to say exposed, way too strong of a term. You just see some cracks there in our secondary lately, and I think that, there's some real possibilities that Amari Cooper can get free. Now, I'm going to jump into this in just a second, but you'll see that this offense doesn't necessarily hit down the field very much, but they certainly are capable. And then I think other than that, Njoku is a tight end. I had him on my fantasy team. He is wildly inconsistent. I don't know if it's him or if it's the quarterback. I think he's gotten a little more inconsistent now that Watson's back. I thought with Brissett targeted him relentlessly, which I thought was great. He's a very athletic tight end, which can be an issue for us. But Watson and Njoku are still working out that chemistry. So I don't know if he's going to have a really big game against us, but it's certainly possible. So I say all that to say that I think that this offense with the Cleveland Browns is not clicking yet, but they are very close to a very big game. And unfortunately, I'm a little nervous that big game might be this week. So a lot to look out for there. I am going to bring up some statistics I want to share with you guys. If you're listening on audio, I am going to verbalize these things as well. So don't you worry. Let's look at the passing depth for Deshaun Watson. This is always one of our favorite charts on the podcast. It gives you a perspective as to where these guys are going to go with the football. So as always, let's start deep. Deshaun Watson. Deep outside left, 20-plus yards, 0-4, and a pick. Deep middle, plus 20 yards, 1 of 2, 21 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Outside right, 0 of 3, no touchdowns, no interceptions. That's outside right plus 20 yards. What does that tell you? Beyond 20 yards is off limits to this Cleveland Browns offense. It's not happening. They don't do it. And when they do it, they don't do it well. And this is Deshaun Watson playing. And Deshaun Watson is an extremely good quarterback, at least he has been historically. But maybe that rust is preventing that deep connection. Maybe it's a lack of deep weapons. I don't know. I do like Donovan Peoples-Jones as well out of Michigan. I did want the Commanders at that time, the Redskins, to get him. But that's neither here nor there. The big point is, our deep safeties probably don't have to worry that much this week. It's about what's in front of you that they're going to have to worry about stopping. If you look at Deshaun Watson, he makes his money 10 to 20 yards down the field. In terms of completions, you'll see a lot of his scoring plays actually come pretty close to the line of scrimmage. But 10 to 20 yards, outside left, 7 to 10, 122 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but 111.3 NFL rating. Between the numbers, meaning in the middle, 9 of 13, 143 yards, no touchdown, 1 pick, 73.6 NFL rating. But that completion percentage is there, as is the yardage. Outside right, 10 to 20 yards, 3 of 5, 49 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Now, bring it in a little closer, 0 to 10 yards. Outside left, 11 of 18, 98 yards. Between the numbers, 19 to 27, 147 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. 7-11 on the outside right, 7-11, 28 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. So, all in all, the outside right is not something I'd be terribly concerned about. It looks like they're more effective in the middle and outside left. And then if you look at balls at the line of scrimmage, 3 of 3, 19 yards out to the outside left, 1 touchdown, 132.6 NFL rating. In the middle of the field, at the line of scrimmage, 9 of 10, 61 yards, 1 touchdown. Outside right, 2 of 2, 15 yards. Again, the right side of the field is not his favorite part of the field. Very similar to Brock Purdy from last week with the 49ers. I think, though, that this data is a very small data set, and that as he starts to mature in this offense, you're going to see him spread the ball around much more effectively like he did when he was in Houston. I don't know if that week is going to be this week, but I got a little bit of a feeling that it's going to really start clicking for the Cleveland Browns this week, fellas. So a lot to be concerned about, if you will, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you hit all the nails on the head there with Watson, and the big key is he's just getting back into rhythm, and this is the best time to attack him. But something that as you were going through that, I couldn't help but as you were talking about Nick Chubb and their running game, like at the beginning of the season when we were talking about what were the strengths of the team going to be. What did we say this one was going to be? It was going to be the offensive line was going to be our strength. It is literally probably our biggest weakness, among other things. It's one of our weaknesses. That's not the case for the Browns. The Browns have some excellent offensive linemen. Bill Callahan is there, who used to be here with us a few years ago. Joel Bitonio is a Pro Bowl guard. Wyatt Teller is also another excellent guard. I think they just gave Jack Conklin, their right tackle, a big extension like a couple of days ago. Their offensive line, like our defensive line, we always talk about is really good. They're going to have their hands full because this entire offensive line 1 through 5 is excellent. So that's going to be the tale of this game is who does better, right? Our defensive line versus their offensive line. Because if their offensive line does, Ellie, like you were talking about Nick Chubb, he's going to go off on us.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, it's a great segue because look at the Deshaun Watson passing against pressure. When he's kept clean, his PFF rating is 69.8. When he's under pressure, it's 48.1. So you can be effective if you can get home. When he's not blitzed, he's about 59.8. And when he is blitzed, he's 68.4. But what that tells you is when they're blitzing, but they don't get pressure, he's highly effective. So if you miss on your blitz, he's going to start to carve you up a little bit, right? But when you can bring that pressure and you can get home, then you can certainly have some effectiveness. And I think that John Allen and Daron Payne are going to be big for us because that pressure coming right up the middle is really hard to deal with from an NFL quarterback's perspective. And I think those guys have been doing such a tremendous job, of doing that this year. One other thing I want to share with you guys is the passing concept and the effectiveness for Watson. Whoops, there. Okay, so play action pass. He only has a 55.5 rating this year. Now, think about this. He's turning his back to the defense, and he has to read the field again. Now, that makes sense for a guy with a 2-year layoff. He's not seeing the whole field, at least not immediately. He's probably a little slow processing things. But then you see no play action involved. 66.5 PFF rating, 61.3 pass rating. He when he gets time to look at the whole field without having to look behind him or hit the run fakes, he can still be relatively effective. Screen passes, 63.0 pass rating. But when there's no screen, and we saw this in that other chart, when he's starting to just throw the ball down the field, it's not there yet for him, or at least it hasn't been to this point. But it is coming, folks. Forget whatever happened off the field at this point for this conversation, at least. And you have to remember this guy is a good NFL quarterback, and it's going to click at some point. All right, Eric, 3 ways to win, 3 ways to lose, sir.
All right, we're going to win this game. As we've already said many, many times, we're going to win this game if we commit to the run and the play action pass game. That is going to be huge for us this week. This is a defense that can be run on and will be susceptible to the play action, and that is how we win this game. We lose this game if we go back to our Carson Wentz game of early in the season where he's just dropping back 7 steps and throwing the ball. We're not going to be able to hold up our pass rush. It's terrible. It's not going to be able to hold up on that. We're going to win this game if we get to the quarterback with 4. I don't care. I don't care about blitzing this. We're not a big blitzing defense. When we have blitz, it's been pretty effective. So I'm not opposed to it, but our bread and butter is getting to the quarterback with our front 4/front 5 when we run that 5-man front. We're going to lose this game if we don't. If the offensive line holds up and Deshaun Watson gets time in the pocket, we're going to struggle. It could very well click for this week. We are going to lose this game if we don't figure out how to cover a tight end. George Kittle killed us last week, and I know David and Njoku was watching that game film and just licking his chops because the middle of the field was wide open the entire second half, probably the entire first half as well. But they started exploiting it in the second half. So we've got to get that short up. I'm not sure if that's just the coverages we were running, what was going on with that, but the middle of the field was wide open. We got to get that figured out. Finally, we win this game if our linebacker singular plays well. We got some good production out of David Mayo last week, which anything from him is great. He played a great game actually, but you can't expect that every week. Jamin Davis is the guy this week that's got to get home. I would imagine they're going to do a little bit of spying on Deshaun Watson with him. He's going to be huge in the run game. With Nick Chubb, as good as he's been playing, and that offensive line, if they're opening holes, Jamin Davis has to be there to fill those holes. And I think he's up to the task. So I think that is going to be the key to the game. Jamin Davis, the linebackers in general are going to have to play really well to win this game.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Brian, if you had to give us a key to the game, what would it be, sir?
Well, the key to the game, I think this kind of goes with what Eric was saying there, our secondary. Tell me how much we missed Cam Curl. Cam Curl misses last week, and all of a sudden tight ends are catching touchdowns. I mean, on that play that Kittle got, there were 2 guys wide open deep in the middle of the field. Like they just had no idea, what was going on back there. And that's part of Cam Curl's, what makes him a good player is that he tells the other guys what to do, where to be. We heard Derek Forrest after the game say he misread something. Well, usually that doesn't happen because, Cam Curl's there to tell him what he needs to actually do. So we need to get Cam Curl back because the secondary is not the same without him back there. And it was obvious against San Fran. So I think that's going to be one of those big keys. I think the next big key to this game is, are we going to go with that run or are we going to go with the pass? And I unfortunately think we're going to go pass, and I think we're going to pass it a lot because, we have a pass first offensive coordinator. That's what he likes to do. It's his nature, and he's not shy about doing it, and he has the authority to do it. So I think that's those 2 things. We got to get Cam Curl back in the secondary, and what are we going to do on offense? And I think unfortunately it's going to be a lot of passing.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, you brought up Jamin Davis. I want to point out something interesting with him. Do you guys know that he has 68 snaps as the slot corner this year, 40 snaps as D-line, and 658 snaps in the box? He also has 1 snap at free safety. They have been 10 snaps as wide corner, but the slot corner where he's matching up against that first team receiver. That happened 10 times in week 15 and 5 times in week 16. So something interesting there. Jamin Davis is also interesting because it seemed like, to me, he got out to a really good start. And then it felt like he faded, but PFF says he still remained pretty consistent. And maybe it's that consistency that's kept his name from really being called. He's just kind of, doing what he does. I do notice that they had him at middle linebacker as his position in week 12 and week 13. And then he's been at will linebacker in 15 and 16, where he's graded out extremely well there as well. So just
he's a natural weak side linebacker. I mean, that's where he needs to be. Yeah. I think they've got Bostic and Mayo basically playing the other linebacker opposite him, and they don't really have a Sam linebacker. I think they've just got the Mike and the Will. And his natural position as well. That's where he needs to be. He can probably play little Sam. He struggled in coverage early on, but he's gotten much better. I think he can keep up with tight ends, but I think if you got Cam Curl basically playing that third linebacker spot, it's a no-brainer to put him on a tight end. Yeah. He's big enough and he's fast enough to cover most tight ends. But yeah, Davis, I think he's having a solid, if not spectacular year. And he's just miles ahead of what he was last year.
Yep.
So I think he's only going to improve, in years to come.
Ellie, how many snaps did he have at slot corner?
68 on the year. Yep.
68 on the year. And that just, it makes me think back to the Dallas game and to the Detroit game where we had Jamin Davis lined up on the other team's number one wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and both went for touchdowns. And that's not at all on Jamin. That's on the scheme. Like, how do you have your linebacker matched up? And I get it. Maybe there's, one or two times where the offense kind of, they get you, right? They out scheme you and they put your middle linebacker in that type of position, but that just can't happen. 68 snaps. That seems like a very high amount to be putting him in the slot. Like, yeah, that, I don't
especially with as many defensive backs as they play. They've always got 5 or 6 defensive backs in the game.
I mean,
a lot of time it's 5 linebacker or 5 linemen, 5 defensive backs, and Jamin Davis, and he still, ends up in the slot. But a lot of that, like you said, is scheme. I think. A lot of times it's just they'll motion a running back out, and he'll have to go out and he'll have to go with him because they're in a man. They're in man coverage or something like that, or they don't match up for whatever reason with what the offense puts out there. And he ends up on a slot receiver. It's kind of stinks, but sometimes it happens. But 68 times seems like a lot.
Yeah, agreed. That hopefully Jack Del Rio doesn't let that happen again this game.
It's going to. All right. Eric, give me your score and how you think the game's going to go, man.
I think this is a shocking, a low-scoring game. I don't think either team gets to 20 points this week. I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to have his breakout game. And I think that this defense will do a good enough job on their running game to keep it low scoring. Offensively, I see another 2 touchdown, 2 field goal type of game. So I'm going to go with a missed extra point because that's what we do. I'm going to go 19-13 Commanders this week.
Ooh, 19-13. Okay. All right, Brian, what say you?
I think this is unfortunately the Browns come out on top here. I think they race out to a lead on us. Maybe a 14-0 type lead. I think we have to throw it, and I think Carson has a bunch of yards, 300 plus. I think we end up the day with 21 points, all passing touchdowns by Carson, but the Browns score 28 and we lose. It's 28-21 Browns. Unfortunately, I don't want it to be that way, but that's just the feeling that I'm getting.
Okay.
I'm feeling a pass. We're just going to chuck it deep.
Now, this is the same guy that said 9-7 last week, and it was like 58-17.
Yeah.
Hey,
no. Yeah,
I felt a little bit better last week. I don't feel as good this week.
I think that this is a game the Commanders are going to win pretty easily. I'm going to put it that way. I think the Browns are all in for 2023, as they should be, because they will probably be Super Bowl contenders next year.
I say that every year.
Yeah, but they got a quarterback now.
Okay.
So look, I'm gonna give the Commanders 42 points this week.
42 points. What? We haven't scored 42 points in December.
I was pretty close last week to my score. I'm a roll with this one. It's going to be 42-32. The Commanders get the dub, lock in a playoff spot, and then we'll figure it out from there. You heard me. 42 Washington Commanders to 32 Cleveland Browns. And
42
I think,
to 32.
Yeah. Wentz is going to go for 420 this week. He's going to go for
Cleveland fans that watch this. He is LE.
Yeah,
Eric has nothing to do with this. At
declassified WFT.
42.
Yes, 3 touchdowns for Wentz. Brian Robinson Jr. gets 2 touchdowns. And I think the final touchdown will be scored by Jonathan Williams. You heard it here first.
Get Jay Will in the end zone.
Let's do it, man.
Let's do that.
That would be
guy
good.
in the end zone.
Yeah. And I think Nick Chubb scores every touchdown for the Browns, except for 1 rushing touchdown by Deshaun Watson.
They're going to remember they have Kareem Hunt on their roster.
Oh, that's right.
They don't. Yeah, I don't understand what's going on in Cleveland, but I mean, I'm pretty sure Kareem Hunt's good.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So if you're a Cleveland fan, got an amazing 1-2 punch there, but you just don't put that guy on the field. Don't start this week. Don't start this week.
Don't let it happen now. But if you're a Cleveland fan watching this, tell us why Kareem Hunt is not being used more. I recognize that Chubb is having a tremendous year, but you got to find time for both of those guys. At least it feels like you should be able to. Eric, final thoughts?
42 points is an awful lot for this offense. We could play a team without a defense, and I don't think we get to 42. But okay, man. Now, this is very much a 19-point offense, and this is going to remain a 19-point offense for the foreseeable future. I just hope we can hold the Browns under said 19 points. I think they can this week. They've been struggling to score points, albeit against some good defenses the past few weeks. But newsflash, we have a pretty good defense too. So I think 19-13 is a safe score. Wouldn't surprise me to lose this game, but I think that this is a win for us.
All right. Brian, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Our coaching staff does not learn lessons very well. Our offense has been trending more towards the pass over the last couple of weeks. And I think we're going to see a lot more passing. I think the first run that gets stuffed in this game on Sunday, Scott Turner is just going to say, chuck it. And he's going to throw it every last play. Brian Robinson will have like 4 carries by the end of the game. Curtis Samuel may be the leading rusher in this game because we're just going to throw it. Carson's going to have some great numbers. He's probably going to have 3 TDs, maybe a pick as well too. But it's 28-21. I see a lot more passing coming.
Brian Robinson's going to have 86 yards on 4 carries. And no touchdowns because that's
They'll get the 86 yards in the first quarter and we'll be back on the field.
22 yards a carry. That sounds about right. And then they'll stop giving it to him.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to make the playoffs with this team, this is an absolute must win. You do not want to lose this game or it gets real ugly for your playoff hopes real quick. And you never want to leave your playoff life up to your division long-term rival, the Dallas Cowboys. And they hate us as much as we hate them, and they are not going to lose to us just so that we can make the playoffs, fellas. So, all right. If you've made it this far, please subscribe, as we said at the beginning of this podcast. We'll be back after the game with all of our thoughts to provide that to you guys. We certainly appreciate you riding with us in 2022. Stay locked. Stay loaded because plenty more is coming in 2023. It only gets better from here, people. So make sure you're locked in, subscribed, whatever else you can possibly do, make it happen. We are out of here. Let's go get this W against the Cleveland Browns. Thank you for listening.